regular season now in the rear view mirror, how confident are we that this 2025 Denver Broncos team is a true Super Bowl contender? Which of the 4 possible playoff teams that the Broncos could face in the divisional round do we feel most confident in? And could there be some poaching in the very near future by other teams within the Broncos coaching staff? All things to come on today's rundown. Thank you so much for joining us. While you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to our Denver Sports 1043 The Fan YouTube channel. You can find us at Denver Sports 1043 on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. If you're watching us on X or on Facebook, we love you. We appreciate you. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on those post notifications so you never miss a moment with us. Tons to get into on another Victory Monday, the 14th Victory Monday of the season for the Denver Broncos. And as always, we welcome in our friend of the show, NFL Insider to the Stars, James Palmer. James, for the 14th time in 17 weeks, we are chatting on a Monday following a Broncos win. And this one, I think these Week 18 matchups are always kind of hard to gauge how you want to feel going into it, because you have teams playing for different motivations. Things are locked up. Things are up in the air. You have incentives. You have resting players. Last year, we got the drubbing of the B team Kansas City Chiefs in Week 18 that helped them secure a wild card bid. This time, we got a little bit more of a grind to the finish offensive performance from the Broncos against a Chargers team that was resting at least some prominent starters. What were your overall thoughts on the game?
Honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind, Richie, it centers around the Chargers, honestly. And it'll get into what's going on right now, obviously, with a lot of coaching changes. I said this, I think, to you last Monday going, they still have to play Jesse Minter's scheme. They still have to play what he does as a defensive coordinator and how good he is at changing the picture on you late, and how good he is at knowing what your protection scheme is and bringing pressure opposite of that. So there's guys that come unblocked. All of the players, whether they're starters or not, are learning that scheme every week. And so we knew going in, at least this is what I said, you still have to go against a very good scheme. And I think it's a great test before you head into the postseason, because what Jesse runs is very complicated and hard to dissect as an offense and for a quarterback. And I think it was a great test for Bo going into it. The reason I say about Jesse is oftentimes, and I tweeted this out, when backups play very well, it's a feather in the cap of the coaching staff, specifically the coach that works with that side of the ball. I think you could say the same for Matt LaFleur with Malik Willis. You could say the same for Jesse Minter in this Week 18 game against the Broncos. He's a very sought-after candidate, and a lot of teams want to talk to him, and they're going to get an opportunity to at some point here. But I thought that part jumped out at me, and especially spending some time with the Chargers, that he is really, really thought of highly in that building, very similar to Vance Joseph, and we'll get to it. But I did think that was a very tough scheme, no matter who's on the field, Richie, for this Broncos offense to go against. And I kind of liked that heading into Week 18. I would have liked them to play better, but I liked that they were going against a difficult scheme.
And let's not forget, James, that the Chargers couldn't sit everybody. You can't.
That's the other thing, everybody always says. I think Mike Evans said to me on Friday, he was like, so this is just a mop-up. I'm like, you don't have 14 guys that just never play. You
can't sit everybody on a defensive line. No.
Everybody can't sit.
Yeah. So I think that certainly there's some nuance to that conversation, and I think you and I had the conversation leading up to the game, and I know it was certainly spread around most of the market here, James, was the concept of style points, right? Not just winning a game that you're supposed to win, which they being the Broncos, set up to win this game. The Chargers were essentially conceding, hey, we don't think that what we can gain in terms of playoff seeding advantage, going from a 5 to the 7 or any kind of shakeout between there, isn't worth the rest that we could gain for a banged up roster. So we're conceding that. Right. Yeah. So we're conceding that if we're the Chargers. And so there's an element of, hey, you're supposed to win this game, but many people also think you should win it the way it should look a certain way, right? Like it did against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that section of the fan base maybe was a little bit disappointed with the offensive output, only putting up 9 offensive points, 12 offensive points. Yeah, because the defensive touchdown plus 4 field goals.
First one of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And while there were some encouraging things on the defensive side, it gets I think the narrative gets pulled in the direction of, well, they were sitting so many guys and you're going up against Trey Lance and Noah Marion Hampton. How much of what we saw specifically from the offense, James, for the Broncos was a byproduct of Sean Payton maybe having an intentionally vague or vanilla game plan? There's always a chance you could face the Chargers again in a couple of weeks, depending on how the wild card situation pans out, or just to the postseason field in general. So keeping the cards close to your vest. And how much of it, James, was, hey, this is kind of just how the Broncos offense has operated for the majority of their 17-game sample size in 2025?
Yeah, I don't think anybody would think you're out of line, Richie, to say that this offense has been inconsistent this season, right? We've seen flashes where you go, oh, seen flashes where you're like, man, what has happened over these last couple of quarters? That's been kind of part of the theme with the way this offense is operated. I also think you're right. I don't think you show a whole lot in that Week 18 game, specifically considering the circumstances. When you mentioned you could face the Chargers, there were people in that Chargers building that I was talking to that were like, we could be back here in a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? Like, and so there's that part of it. Then there's the part where you saw the way Trey Lance was playing. You saw the way this Broncos defense was playing. Your goal to come out of this is to win this game and get the number 1 seed. Oftentimes, and I'm not saying there's no knowledge, honestly, that I have of this happening specifically with the Broncos, but you could look at it and go, we can see what this offense with Trey Lance is capable of against our defense, which is still one of the best in football. Let's make sure we get out of here with a win and we don't turn the football over. And we find ways to make sure that we get the W that we desperately need. I think everybody in that Broncos building knows how important that number 1 seed. I think everybody in Jacksonville and New England also knew how important the 1 seed is with the way the AFC landscape is. Everybody has a possibility of really making the Super Bowl, in my opinion, out of the AFC. Almost every team, except maybe who played last night. I don't know if the Steelers have an opportunity. But outside of that, I mean, I could see almost every team going for a run, and that's why I think getting the 1 was so important. Did you want to run the football better? Certainly. Did you want to be sharper as an offense? Certainly. All of those are a given. But I do think you might skew your game plan and what you're calling and what you're doing a little bit, Richie, when you saw the way Trey Lance was playing and saw the inability of the Chargers to maybe put points on the board.
Well, you touched on the AFC playoff bracket, which is now finalized. So let's just go there, James. As the Broncos secure the number 1 seed and the first round bye in the process, the field goes Patriots and Chargers, which will be Sunday evening. You've got the Jaguars and Bills, and then the Steelers, who found their way into the postseason going up against the Texans in a 4-5 matchup there. Our poll question this week is specifically set up because we're going to have a week to wait. Which team would you think, James, would be the best matchup for the Denver Broncos heading into the divisional round of the 4 seeds that could possibly, because of reseeding, end up as a divisional round opponent for the Broncos between the Steelers, Texans, Bills, and Chargers? Based on what you've seen over the body of work of this season, covering the league as you do, and how teams are trending heading into the beginning of the postseason with Wild Card Weekend, which team do you think presents the best matchup for the Denver Broncos, who will be waiting after Wild Card Weekend?
Steelers. 100% it's the Steelers.
I agree.
It's, you have a rare player in the reigning defensive player of the year in Pat Surtain that has the size, speed, agility to match up with DK Metcalf. Very few teams in this league have somebody that could play DK one-on-one. And we see this offense operate the last couple of weeks without DK Metcalf. And it's just different, right? You could almost neutralize the entire really passing attack that the Steelers have used, and they've been searching for a number 2. Calvin Austin has thrived at times. Kenneth Gainwell has been, I think he's second on that team in receiving, actually, as a running back, and he's been a really good weapon for them catching the football and running the football. But I just think that offensive line, with the issues that they've had at left tackle, it's been 3 or 4 players have played there. Do they slow down a defensive front in Denver that had 68 sacks this year? Like, I don't see that happening. I don't think you fear that offense by any stretch, and I don't think Denver's offense or essentially fear the way the Steelers defense is played. It hasn't been outstanding. Have they had certain performances where you go, yes, I get why this is the highest paid defensive unit in football, but there's more times than not, Richie, aren't you going, man, a lot of those dollar signs are behind guys that have a 3 next to their age, and guys are starting to get a little bit older. But I don't know. Cam Hayward, he's a Buckeye, so he can play forever, but he's been unbelievable in what he's doing in the middle of that defense. But overall, I don't think Sean would have a hard time finding ways that he could exploit that group and find matchups that he thinks he could like. So I think it's clearly the Steelers, because of when you look at the other teams as well, and you look up the number one player to Pittsburgh is probably, outside of Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and you have a rare talent that has the ability to match up against him.
I agree, James. I think that's how it would shake out to me. You'd need basically, I guess, all chalk matchups at that point in order to play the 4 seed. And I don't know that that's what you will get, because I think this is going to be a bloodbath of a wild card weekend.
Yeah. I'll say this real quick, just to interrupt you. Like, I was talking to a GM the other day who was like, Texans, Chargers, Bills, I could see all 3 of them easily winning their first game. Easily.
Yep.
And I think we can see that. I think we can see that from all 3 of those teams. Honestly, I think they're favorable matchups too. I talked to people with the Chargers today who were like, we really like this matchup against New England. They don't rush the passer great. And that's what's been the Achilles heel for Justin Herbert in that group. He's been hit more than anybody. And then you look at that group that I just mentioned in Pittsburgh having to block Danielle Hunter and and Will Anderson and that whole group. Like, I mean, yeah. And then the Bills are capable of anything. I love Jacksonville. I really do. I think they're pretty complete. I think there's a lot of people in the league. They're like, I don't know what to think of them. I just think they're good. But Buffalo has the ability with Josh Allen to do anything. So
if there's one type of game that the Bills can win with Josh Allen, it's a shootout, and that's probably what you have a good chance of getting against a Jacksonville offense that seems to have kind of found its way over the last month or so.
I like their defense a little bit, though. I do. I think Anthony Cabanelli's done a good job with the group. I don't think anybody can name anybody on that defense.
Right.
But they're all really good at what they do. They really are. But I think you're right. Josh is the wild card of the AFC. I think he is. As an individual, if you pick one player, Josh Allen is the wild card of the entire AFC.
You have to figure, too, that every AFC playoff team right now is having the exact same conversation, including from the Broncos all the way down to the 7-seeded Chargers of like, hey, who knows when there's going to be a year that falls like this ever again, where there's
a serious conversation.
You have no Joe Burrow in the playoffs. You have no Patrick Mahomes. I love that the NFL or whoever it was put the graphic out there that was like, for the first time since 2018, the AFC is going to crown a champion that doesn't include Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. And it's like, well, okay, Joe was like one of those, and the other 7 were Patrick Mahomes. So that's a little bit like you're in the group, but you're doing the least amount of work on the group project kind of thing. Not to take anything away from Joe, but
Joe's pretty damn good.
I love Joe Burrow. No Joe Burrow, no Patrick Mahomes, no Lamar Jackson. Every team in this AFC playoff field has to be looking at themselves in the mirror and talking amongst their group saying, hey, who knows if the stars are ever going to align like this? This is the year that it has to happen. From Bo Nix and Sean Payton to Sean McDermott and Josh Allen to DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud. It feels like it's going to be the same message across the board, right?
I completely agree. And that was the conversation I was having with people on the Chargers sideline pregame. Like, it was like, hey, if any year that's just wide open, this is the year. Like, and I think that's why when we started this conversation, Richie, like the number 1 seed was so coveted, because just one less game in such a topsy-turvy group is such an advantage. I really think it is. And I think every one of those teams they do think they have an ability. I mean, if you look at the group in the AFC right now, you could say, obviously, I think Josh Allen's won 7 postseason games.
Yeah.
I mean, we know Aaron Rodgers has played in the postseason a million times. I think he's got 11, postseason victories. The next guy, do you know who it is? In terms of postseason wins? CJ Stroud with 2.
Yeah.
It's with 2. He's gone 2-2 in the postseason. So after that, everybody's got 1 or 0.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it, you're going, okay, we all have an opportunity here. And I think that's why every building is having that discussion. I think it's why Jacksonville's so excited about what they have going right now. I think it's why, Houston, you mentioned, is so stoked about what's going on, because I don't think anybody wants to play that defense, and they can hit a couple of chunk plays with CJ Stroud. He's got such a high ceiling that there's just flashes, right, where he plays great. He did that against Kansas City last year where they came up short in the postseason. I was at that game. He connects on a couple balls, and with that defense, they're in a great spot. So I think everybody in the entire conference is going, there might not be another year like this,
right?
Where we have this opportunity. I think it draws excitement as a whole.
Quick hypothetical related to the poll question that I just thought of. Let's say, James, hypothetically, that the Mike Tirico announcer jinx doesn't happen, and Tyler Loop, who was brought in for these moments and everything that Tirico was building up, it was a beautiful call, but everything he was building up, let's say that kick doesn't go wide. and the Baltimore Ravens are the 4 seed in this playoff bracket instead of the Steelers in the AFC. Who, with that setup, do you think would be the best matchup for the Broncos in the divisional round if it were to be reseeded? Would it still be the 4-seeded Ravens like it was the Steelers, or is there somebody else then?
Who would I got? Texans. I got
Texans, Chargers, Steelers, and throw it up there one more time, then, Trey. Yeah, Bills.
Bills, right?
Yeah.
I think what we saw in the second half is why everybody's breathing a sigh of relief that kick went wide, right? I mean, you saw vintage Lamar in the second half of that game. This was 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson in that game. And everybody's going, oh, man, like this is – I don't want to face that. It's so unpredictable. It's so hard to guard. You have to change what you do defensively compared to what you do almost against any other player in the league. It's so unique. I do think I was thinking about the first round, but you'd be in the second round. Kyle Hamilton being out would be a real issue for them in their first game. Yeah. But if it's 2 weeks from then, you would think possibly he'd be back. I still think it would maybe be – I think it would be the Ravens because they would be playing into your strength as a team if you're Denver. And that defense has had an issue getting after the quarterback. That defense has had some issue. They played better the second half, certainly did. Certainly did. But I still think maybe Baltimore would be the team because they've just been so inconsistent on either side of the ball that I think I would still pick them even though Lamar is such an X factor.
Yeah, I think that it's certainly a fair conversation. I guess if it was not the Steelers and it was the Ravens instead, I, in my own mind, might start to entertain would a third installment rematch with the Chargers maybe be somewhere in that territory. It's a team you're familiar with. Who knows what their health situation is like. And even though you technically split the season with them, the time that they beat you in week 3 of this season was a walk-off situation with crazy things kind of involved in it. So you probably could go into that with a modicum of confidence there as well. All right, it is time to hit the turn, presented by the Birdie Bar, Louisville's premier indoor golf bar and entertainment venue. With their outdoor patio and mini golf setup, they have everything you need to cure your winter blues. James, we've been speculating about it for most of the season, especially with how out of a cannon the Broncos defense seemed to shoot, from a statistical standpoint, especially the sack production. But we are now here. The coaching carousel is beginning to spin. We have firings up and down the NFL going on for most of the morning and even into the early hours, or the late hours, I should say, last night. And we have one confirmed interview request for Broncos defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, and there's plenty of speculation, reasonably so, that more will be to come. What are you hearing about Vance Joseph from sources around the league about his prominence as a candidate to become a head coach for the second time in his NFL career?
I'm going to look up a note here because I had something. Oh, there it is. On this, it's been known and understood for some time, Richie, that he was going to get an interview in Tennessee.
Yeah.
That was their plans for a while now. They just can't contact him, right, and can't set it up. Now they can, and he can interview this week because of the Broncos having the bye, so they can jump at that, and they can interview Matt Nagy because they're done. And Nagy's actually essentially a free agent. And he has a very close relationship to Mike Borgonzi, obviously, with the both of them spending so much time in Kansas City. So those are kind of the ones out of the gate there in Nashville. I think he has a realistic shot. Now, we were curious how many openings there were going to be. Were we going to reach 7 like we did, I believe, last year? We haven't. So always that plays a part. Everybody in the entire league, to my understanding, that I spoke to, was curious if Kevin Stefanski was going to lose his job or not, because that guy might jump right to the top of the list on almost every team's list. Yeah. He is a 2-time coach of the year. It was a bad quarterback situation spot. He won 11 games twice. He got that team playing at some point steering his tenure. Better than we've ever seen the Browns in recent memory. He is an outstanding coach in a lot of people's minds across the league. So he might throw things for a loop. That's what candidates were curious about, because that might just take one spot off the board. Now, some people were kind of hee-hawing that he may take a year off. That may not look like the case. I'm still not completely sold, but that doesn't look like the case, that he would take a year off. He's very close to Mike Vrabel, and Vrabel did that with great success. But I could see him just jumping right back in, certainly. being refreshed, and that would take a spot away. I think Vance is so well respected for what he does on his side of the ball, but not only just the way the scheme works, the way he plays to player strengths, the way that this entire group functions. It's the teacher he is and the culture he created on that side of the ball. And I think that's when I've had these conversations with Zach Allen. He was on my show on The Athletic, and he gave like an endorsement that was so unbelievable. I think we had to like cut it off for Broncos fans because they didn't want to hear it, because they don't want to lose Vance Joseph. I mean, Zach's been with him for what, 8 years, 7 years? 7 years.
Yeah, between Arizona and here.
And here. And so he knows him better than anybody. And just the teacher he is, and the culture that he creates on that side of the ball, I think is really, really special. And I think what happened the first time and what went wrong and how it was, laid out to him and how it played out, in my opinion, Richie, is actually to his advantage, because he didn't get a real crack. He didn't get a real shot. He didn't have a whole lot of say, but he also at the same time got some of that experience. So he kind of won in the experience game, lost with, this guy didn't get a real shot. I think people are very interested to see what he can do. And I do think him, Jesse Minter in LA, like I mentioned earlier, with what Mike McDonald has done very quickly in Seattle, I think helps all of these defensive coaches in this cycle for sure.
Yeah, you get a little bit of a bump because of people that are in your same archetype having success, leading into
Jesse specifically.
Potential candidacy. And, you bring up VJ's first tenure here, and it became part of the butt end of the joke by the time VJ's time as head coach here was done. But I think that the ringing endorsements that you hear from guys like Zach Allen and many of those other Broncos defenders of Vance's ability to just truly embody that leader of men and to create that culture and to be the teacher who can relate to his players on a deeper level than just, the surface, I think is something that organizations, particularly ones who are firing a head coach and need to rebuild in that department, would find attractive. And so if an organization can look at Vance Joseph and his first time around with the Broncos, with how much dysfunction and lack of continuity or communication there was there, similarly to how people will probably look at the Browns situation with Stefanski and say, well, if this was a good coach with a poorly run organization or in a bad situation, we're better than that. We're different than that. And so our results, I think, will be on the north side, of that scale.
Yeah, I would say that. And the other thing I would add is, and I think this is really important, I had this conversation with Alex Singleton a long time ago, and he brought up kind of how him and VJ were sitting in his office after they gave up the 70 points or whatever it was to Miami. And kind of both of them going like, I don't know where we go from here. Like, and I don't know what my future is. I don't know what my future is. Like, am I going to be let go? Sean had every right to consider it, obviously, with the way the defense was playing in the beginning. And he was taking over a defense that a lot of those guys really loved playing in what he was running. So he had to take the whole group that didn't have a lot of success early on and have them trust him and believe in his system and believe what he wanted to change from a defense that they liked to his defense. And to get that buy-in and to get that turnaround, I don't think should be understated, because he came in again. And I remember Alex telling us, he's like, we really liked the last defense. Like, we liked it. And so to convince everybody, even when there was a rough start, to have that buy-in and then to find that success with it, I think is something that teams notice if they know that story and know what he was able to do, because it was not smooth sailing right out of the gate. And that's important.
Yeah, and it's a testament to the faith and the patience and the long-term vision of Sean Payton and Greg Penner and all of them, who could have easily taken that as an opportunity to say, hey, maybe this is a perfect segue to break point and go in a different direction. And, Sean has not been bashful about bringing in people from former New Orleans connections. And I think a lot of us watching that happen said, yeah, you know what, that's probably, the door is certainly open in that regard. And they don't. And now the Broncos and both coaches are much better off for it. Last one on the Vance Joseph potential hiring cycle and the coaching carousel here from me, James. How realistic do you think it is if Vance Joseph is ultimately selected to lead another team and is poached away from the Broncos staff? How realistic do you think that it is that Davis Webb could also come as a part of that departing package. Davis Webb, the quarterback coach for the Broncos, who, and I'm sure you've reported it, and I know you've heard it in league circles, I think is looked at as maybe a potential rising star as an offensive mind in NFL circles, somebody who could be and likely will be an offensive coordinator and beyond someday. Do you find it realistic, given the dynamic at play, that Davis Webb could leave with Vance Joseph as a package deal in that situation?
I think there's a curiosity if VJ leaves, who would be leaving with him? I think that question has been asked in that locker room, probably to players, to one another, on who would be departing with VJ. He's that well liked, and there's that much belief in him. I'm saying coaches, I'm saying players. There's certain guys you love playing for. I mean, that was a big part of Zach Allen, like I mentioned. Like, I remember when VJ got the job, one of the first things I heard is like, he's going to bring Zach Allen with him. Like, and Allen was a free agent, so it works, obviously. But, he had the ability to do that. But, I think Davis is one of the more intriguing candidates in this cycle. It's a very unique cycle. There's a lot of defensive candidates. We mentioned VJ. I mentioned Jesse Minter. I got Chris Shula with the Rams. You got a lot of defensive-minded guys that I think a lot of people respect in what they bring to the table. And have we pivoted from like that young offensive mind that kind of started with Sean McVay and snowballed into a lot of those other coaches? I think that kind of sets Davis into his own kind of category as a young rising guy that played the position in the league for a long time, but also has such a strong background and ability in like kind of like the analytic world and how he is with like, the computer stuff and whatnot. I sound like an old man saying the computer stuff. He kind of fills both buckets. I think there are a lot of teams that want to have a conversation with Davis Webb. I think I'll put it like that. I don't know how many interviews he'll get, but I do think there's teams around the league, to my understanding, that want to get to know him better.
He's a perfect buy low type of candidate if you're looking for an offensive mind, for sure.
Very much so. And if you hire one of these defensive guys, I wouldn't be surprised if VJ and others would be interested in Davis, considering the setup that is here in Denver with Sean calling the plays. And you have Joe Lombardi, and he's going to stay kind of that quarterback coach, you would think, where he's at. And I know that he called a game during preseason, and I know the players thought he did an outstanding job.
Yeah.
So I think he is kind of that guy that fills multiple buckets, has been in the room, has worn the shoes, and that's an important aspect in a lot of people that are trying to develop a young quarterback. And we have a couple of openings here where, let's go through them. You got a former number one overall pick from this year in Nashville that you want to develop. You have Jackson Dart in New York that you want to develop. We don't even know who the quarterback's going to be in Cleveland.
Right.
It could, Andrew Berry said today. Deshaun's still on the books. Andrew Berry said today, our quarterback could very well not be on the roster right now. Yeah. And Vegas is looking for a new quarterback. So I think his skill set and what he's done with Bo early on and the part he's played, I think is very valuable. And I think there's a lot of curious people around the league.
I will take one more question here that just popped up into my head as we were going, and then we'll get out of here.
Where'd they go?
I think there's also a sentiment amongst the fan base and even some, within the local media here who are looking at the concept of Vance Joseph potentially being poached and leaving, but looking at this coaching staff as a whole that says, hey, with Sean Payton and Lombardi and Vance Joseph, this is a confetti test type of coaching, conglomerate. At least we think that it could pass that championship test. So is it simple enough, James, to say that there is at least a potential, a world, a number that the Walton Penner ownership group could circle back at Sean Payton's behest, or maybe at the team's kind of request, and say, hey, why don't we just tear up these contracts and increase the monetary value to maybe persuade the likes of a Vance Joseph or even a Davis Webb to stay here while the Broncos feel like they are in a championship window that could just be opening? Is it that simple? Or is that just not typically how it works during these carousel type of processes?
No, I wouldn't say it's not typically how it works. You can try to do whatever you can to try to have a guy not leave. You also want to make sure that in the future, and the way it's always been, that you don't want to ever give the impression that you're going to hold coaches hostage. I don't think you want that as ownership.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. They have more money than any other ownership group in football.
Yep.
I think everybody needs to remember that there is literally zero salary cap on what you can pay coaches, on how many coaches you have and how much you pay them. There are no rules with that. That's why Chip Kelly got $6 million to be the highest paid offensive coordinator in football last year, and it didn't last the season. But you can give a coordinator really whatever you'd like to give. But you got to remember, once you do that, that precedent has been set as an organization that we are willing to pay coordinators this amount of dollars. And so that part, it comes into play with negotiating for any future coordinators that you have coming in, that they know that the bar is that much higher in your building than it is maybe perhaps in others. I don't know if you're going to break the bank for a quarterback coach. And I don't think you're going to say, with a straight face, like how much you're going to give them. I understand that. You could increase it to whatever you choose. But these guys still have desire and drive. And you would think Vance would want to go, man, I would love another crack at this. You would think Davis, as a young, energetic coach, the way he is, man, I would love to see what else I can accomplish in this league. I do get it, because that's what you're searching for. It's the cheat code that the last two most successful franchises over the last 25 years have had, right? Bill Belichick had Josh McDaniel for all of that. Yes, he had a couple of opportunities, but always came back because they didn't really work real well. Now, Mike Vrabel has the cheat code that Andy Reid's had forever. Josh is not getting another job, right? He's going to be there with Mike and developing Drake May. Steve Spagnuolo, for some reason, could not get a job as another opportunity for a head coach. Now, he's got some interviews, I think, lined up this year at Cycle, and he's going to have an opportunity, but that's been Andy's kind of cheat code. Of course, you would like to replicate that and keep that other side of the ball to, running that side with VJ. But I do think there is an aspect to VJ and Davis and maybe obviously any other coach that they want to see what else they can achieve, just because these guys didn't get to where they're at if they're not as goal-oriented as they are. And so I do think that plays a part. But you're right. You do have that offer on the table if you're Greg Penner, like, hey, VJ, this is what we are willing to pay you if you'd like to stay. You can do that, certainly. There's no rules against any of it.
Trying to ride the line between finding a spot where the pocketbook could potentially override personal pride and ambition and drive and all that. It feels like a good problem to have here in Broncos.
And they had a lot of guys poached this past year, right, Richie, from front office to the staff and everything. So I think you've seen what's happened in this building and the way other teams look at this building and what's kind of been accomplished very quickly, and why some of these guys are getting poached for sure.
James, I know you're a busy man. You've got plenty to report on today with the start of the coaching firing cycle beginning with haste this morning. We'll keep an eye on everything you got going on over at the Athletic.
Let me promote it, Richie? I can promote it. It's going on. I know everybody should be listening to the radio and the fan, but we do have a show coming up in, in 30 minutes roughly, a live show with myself, Chase Daniel, and Diana Rossini on the Athletic. You can find it on YouTube, I believe. Scoop City. And we're going to be doing a live breakdown, also with some writers from some of the cities where some of these guys have lost their gigs. And we're going to have an opportunity to kind of break down the inside look at kind of what transpired with a lot of these jobs. And we're going to talk candidates. I'm curious what Diana's heard and Chase has heard about Vance Joseph. So we're going to talk some candidates, talk some openings, some playoff football as well. I think it's going to be fun.
That is your official preview to the 1,200 of you. The 1,200 of you that are watching live right now, you have 26 minutes to file your TPS reports or move your meeting over because you've got Scoop City with James and Diana and Chase Daniel coming to you live with all the latest on the coaching firings. James, thank you so much for joining us again today. We will catch up with you again next week and hopefully another 2 or 3 more Mondays after that.
We won't know. There's a chance we won't know who they play.
Yeah, I guess that's true. The way that it shakes out.
When we talk, because the Texans and Steelers play Monday night. There's a chance you and I could be having this conversation and not know who they're playing, but there's a chance they could. So
we'll tune in exactly 1 week from now to figure out whether or not that's the case. James, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too, man. Take it easy, Richie.
To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your Victory Monday afternoon. Soak it in, Broncos country, a 14-win season for the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton's first 14-win season in his NFL coaching career. The Broncos are doing something special. And while it has changed and maybe elevated people's expectations and the hype around what this Broncos team can do in the 2025-2026 season, do not let that make you forget to stop and just enjoy what we've been witnessing, because it is special. There's plenty to go on over at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit, leading into this week. We also have a lot to talk about in the coming week about the Nuggets and Avalanche. Got an interesting injury situation going on with the Avalanche that unfolded against the Florida Panthers, and forecasting whether or not the Nuggets are going to be able to hold on with the injury list that continues to grow on their half of Ball Arena as well. All things to come coming up this week. Thank you so much again. Like and subscribe to our Denver Sports 1043 The Fan YouTube page. Follow us on X, on Facebook, on TikTok, wherever you want to consume sports media. We have it available for you on all of these different platforms. We will catch you again tomorrow at noon for the next rundown.